industry within motorsport, and we have 3 industry experts who are going to tell you a little bit about what they do, what they are working on, and how their 2020 season is going to progress. We are working first of all with Sarah Franklin of Sarah Franklin Solicitors.
Thank you, Jake. Good morning, everybody. As Jake just said, I'm Sarah Franklin from Sarah Franklin Solicitors and Motorsport Legal. So a very brief little bit about me, because we don't have an awful lot of time. I've been a lawyer for over 30 years with my own practice for the last 13, nearly 14 years. And I started competing myself in 2004, so I've done quite a lot over the years. So I'll show you a few pickies later. I was a consultant for Motorsport UK for about 4 years, dealing with all their national court work, so actually representing Motorsport UK with anything that went before the national court. And then I started Motorsport Legal in 2018, so I've become sort of the gamekeeper turned poacher, I suppose, or the other way around. So I actually act on behalf of teams and competitors now. So I deal with appeals, protests, national court work, contracts, agreement, disputes, anything to do with motorsport whatsoever. I'm also on the committee of the British Women Racing Drivers Club, and I'm a brand ambassador for the British Motorsport Marshals Club, and the chair is over there, so please go and see the marshals doing brilliant work always. And I'm also still on the Judicial Advisory Committee of Motorsport UK, advising about the rules and regulations. So there you go, it's a bit of the cars that I've driven, a bit Porsche Carrera Cup, production touring car, all sorts of stuff, mainly sports and saloon cars, but recently Clios. So, getting on to the interesting stuff. Motorsport UK has changed a lot in the last 12 months. We've got a new chair, we've got a new CEO, new branding, new location next year in Bicester, and completely new governance, really. On the 19th of March this year, there was a vote of the Motorsports Council to have completely new memorandum and articles of association. And the main impact of that is that all of the committees now, including the Motorsport Council, are purely advisory. So the board of Motorsport UK make all of the decisions now. Everything goes to them under advisement, and they make all of the decisions. So that's going to have a big impact going forward. For competitors and teams, obviously the main thing is this lovely blue book, which I'm sure you've all read from page to page. No, not at all. It's probably still sitting. Actually, they don't even give you a paper copy now, do you? You have to download it or ask for one of these. That's obviously really important, because that is all of the regulations that we have to follow. It's as simple as that. And then we have the gold book, which is just purely for karting, so I'm not going to go too much into that at the moment. It's really important to know your regulations, or at the very least know where to find them, and have a bit of an idea of where things are in this book. But also, are you aware that they update this book with immediate effect during the year? Some people not. We've had 2 rule changes this year with immediate effect. So you need to know what these are, because if you fall foul of them, ignorance is no defence whatsoever. You can sign up for alerts. I've put the link on there, which if anybody wants it later, give me a shout, where you can be told when these decisions have been made and these changes have been made. But immediate changes this year include tightening up when there's no appeal, so cases particularly in karting where there is no appeal available, widening powers of the National Court, the definition of false and jump starts in karting. That one was brought in immediately. A few people fell foul of that one. And the removal of the amount of forward-facing beams you can have in rallying. And they were all brought in with immediate effect. We also have regulations for consultation, and these, I believe, have been passed now and will be in the 2020 edition. So the exceeding track limits, which we all know and love, there's actually now mandatory penalties for exceeding track limits, whether it's a first offence, second offence, because there have been inconsistencies in various championships. You're also not going to be allowed to have a mobile phone or a tablet device in the car when you are on circuit or rallying, which is really important, because a lot of people, I think, use that for timing. You know, there may be a tablet device. You're going to have a special timing device. You're not going to be allowed mobile phones or tablets. So the various things that you'll come across when you're competing for teams. Protests. Do you know if you can protest? Protests are generally regarding eligibility. If you know that another car has probably got a bit of a dodgy ECU and they've won the race and you want to protest it. Do you know if you're able to protest it? Do you know what the time limits are to protest? Essentially, you have to put it in writing, you have to give grounds, and you have to do it within 30 minutes of an end of a competition, although that can be extended in some circumstances by the clerk of the course. investigatory hearings, and this is something people don't hear an awful lot about. So this is where there's been something that's probably come out after the event, where there's been, perhaps the club hasn't followed the right regulations, the officials haven't followed the right regulations. You can notify Motorsport UK, and they have 60 days to decide whether to refer it to the National Court. If they choose not to do so, and you really do think that it should be looked at, then individuals can actually bring an investigatory matter to the National Court. The fee to do so, I think at the minute, is about £2,600, so it's definitely exceptional circumstances. We have appeals. That's normally the one that we see all the time. A clerk of the course has made a decision, we want to appeal the decision. So can you appeal it? Can you appeal the decision, or can you appeal the penalty? And they're two separate things. So you've got the decision first and you've got the penalty second, and you might be able to appeal one but not the other. Initial appeals obviously to the stewards that are at the circuit, other than karting, which the stewards make the first decision. Again, that's a separate thing under the CIK trial. But time is critical. Again, it's 30 minutes in writing with a fee and payable. Having a fair hearing is essential. The Blue Book gives some guidance about how the hearing should happen. And there's actually some judicial procedures which you can get off the Motorsport UK website as well. Do you have them in the car? Do you, in the team lorry? So you know, if you end up being called up, you know what procedure should be followed and if it's fair or not. Obviously, if you're not happy with the steward's decision, you can then appeal to the National Court. Again, time critical. You've got to do it within a certain period of time. You've got to give notice on the day that you want to appeal. You've then got 10 days to file your case, basically, to the National Court. Again, there are times that can be extended. The National Court is essentially a tribunal. It is completely separate from Motorsport UK. They are two very different things. The only thing that links them at the moment is, one, it's heard actually at Motorsport UK House, but also under the new regulations, the new memorandums and articles of association, the board actually appoint the panel. So that's the only link. But it is completely separate, and a lot of people don't appreciate that. They are the only body that can change published results. So if you've got published results, again, another reason for investigatory hearings, if published results have been put forward and they're clearly wrong, it can go to the National Court to change. But they can deal with appeals, disciplinary actions, and investigatory meetings. There are only two grounds for appeal, and that's that there's been a gross miscarriage of justice, or the penalty is wholly inappropriate to the breach of the regulations. So, in summary, in my very short section there, it is really important to know your regulations, to know when you can appeal, when you can protest, what method you need to do and what fee you have to pay. It is all in here. But if you don't know, if in doubt, give me a shout. And I'm available 24/7 up race weekends to give advice if necessary, if you're not sure. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass over now to Julian.
Right, good morning everybody, and my name is Julian Headley, partner at SAFFERY CHAMPNESS in the sports and entertainment section. Been doing this for rather a long time, going back over 30 years of acting for sports and entertainment clients. SAFFERY CHAMPNESS, a firm founded in 1855, top 20 firm, 9 UK offices, 5 international offices, and in our sports and entertainment team, we've got 9 partners and 50 staff. We offer a whole range of tax and accounting services. Thought today we'd concentrate on drivers' tax liability rather than teams. And to make things simple from the start, you make money, you pay tax. Simple as that. Common misconceptions are that if you are under 18, that you don't pay tax. Unfortunately, that's not correct. If you earn less than £12,500, you pay no tax, but don't forget about the national insurance. It's a lower limit. Prize money, often we're told it's not taxable. It is taxable. And if you've been lucky to get a sponsorship deal or endorsement contract, often it will be presented that won't be taxable in overseas jurisdictions. It is taxable in overseas jurisdictions. So, the facts, anyone who earns over £1,000 from any source needs to register with HMRC. Most drivers, when you start, will enter as a sole trader, and this makes you responsible for basically all your own tax affairs, the finances, and paying your own tax on time. So you have to register with HMRC, and you'll only begin to pay tax if your earnings exceed £12,500. If your profits exceed £8,500, you've got to pay national insurance. So, what should be taxed? So UK residents will pay tax on all their worldwide income. Don't live under a misapprehension that if you've got a contract with an overseas party that won't be subject to tax in the UK. It will be. If you receive reimbursed expenses from that company, you also have to include that as income, but you should also be able to take that as a deduction. Look at the various expenses you can deduct. So you can deduct your travel and subsistence, your office expenses, equipment, repairs, license fees, and most importantly, your accountants and lawyers' fees are tax deductible. The reporting deadlines. Once you've started as a self-employed individual and you've registered with HMRC, you need to register by the 5th of October following the date in which you've started. You'll need to submit your first tax return by the following 31st of January. And don't forget, if you're lucky enough to register for VAT, you'll be looking at gross income before expenses of over 85,000. If you've got that, you've got to register within 30 days. If your income in the past 12 months has exceeded £85,000, you need to register for that. And VAT returns are submitted on a quarterly basis, and you end up paying the 7th of the month after the end of the quarter. If you're driving overseas, this is where it gets interesting. Foreign countries love to tax non-resident drivers, and you will often find you've been racing, suddenly there's a withholding tax deduction on your prize money, and you thought, where did that come from? So you've lost either 20 or 30%. Some countries will allow you to file a tax return in that jurisdiction and hopefully get a refund of that withholding tax. But one thing you have to make sure is that you are tax compliant in those overseas jurisdictions. Parental sponsorship. Often we find in motorsport there are lots of drivers whose parents have got businesses. They're very keen to sponsor their children. The trick to watch with HMRC, it's got to be commercial. If your son or daughter is driving in a competition where the total prize winnings can be, £30,000 in a year, £1 million sponsorship from your parents looks a bit out of place. So you've got to make sure it's in line with the commercial realities of where you're driving. You will need to produce evidence that you have used the advertising in your business. So you'll need photographs. You'll need to get equivalent commercial rates. What is the equivalent of advertising in other drivers in that category of driving? So you will need your evidence to support what you've paid. And HMRC are really hot on this, and they will look at it closely. How can we help? We've got a comprehensive team. We can look after everything from your day-to-day bookkeeping, preparing your accounts, completing your tax returns, looking at international races where you need to file. We have an international network who can take care of that filing. And if you want any advice, please feel free to contact us. Thank you. And I'll now hand you... Yeah.
Well done.
Mic is off.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. I'm Kevin Sullivan. Who are we? We're a firm of solicitors down in Kent, pretty close to Brands Hatch, in the Sevenoaks district and the Tunbridge district. We're a full-service law firm. We've been around since 1875, so a bit older than SAFFERY CHAMPNESS, but we've been around for donkey's years. 65 lawyers, 126 staff. As I said, near Brands Hatch, West Kent heartland, but we service businesses nationwide and abroad. So who am I? I'm a partner and a team leader in the corporate commercial and IP team. I'm very sector focused. I deal with lots of TMT businesses. So I deal with IT companies, sport, and the creative industries. I act regularly for businesses that depend on R&D and who monetize their intellectual property rights. So what am I going to talk about briefly today? Not got much time, so I'll probably breeze through a lot of it. Come and have a chat with me afterwards if I go too quickly. But what I'm going to talk about quickly is what is intellectual property. Might be teaching Granny to suck eggs a little bit, but I'll just go through what that is. Why is it important in motorsport? Some problem areas in motorsport, particularly copyright issues and how you protect confidential information particularly, and just recap on how we can help you at the end. So, what is intellectual property? Well, they're intangible rights, intangible property rights effectively. They protect materials, information, ideas, and how ideas are expressed. Why are they important? Well, a lot of them provide monopoly rights. So you can exploit those rights for money. No one else can use them if you have a monopoly in those rights. There are two general categories of intellectual property. You've got your registered rights, which are granted by an official state body. So over here, the UK Intellectual Property Office. They cover things like patents, registered designs, registered trademarks. And then you have your unregistered rights, which arise automatically. So copyright, unregistered design right, database right. And there's a sort of third category, which aren't strictly intellectual property rights, but rights in confidential information is sort of what we call a shows in action. You can sue people if they infringe your confidence. The other thing is rights in passing off, which is essentially rights in unregistered trademarks. So why is it important in motorsports? Well, obviously there's huge investment in engineering and new technologies, ideas, inventions, preparatory design materials. You need to take advantage of that in your business. When your business gets well known, you need to exploit your name. So all of these intangible property rights can only really be protected by intellectual property. And all intellectual property is relevant in motorsport. You've got finished articles, so inventions within those, patents, designs, and obviously the preparatory design materials covers things like copyright and rights in confidential information. So problem areas in motorsport. So copyright's a big problem, not just in motorsport, but in a lot of businesses. And this is because the first owner of copyright is the author, so the person who creates the materials. The only exception to that is employees in your business. So if your employee creates something that has copyright protection, then your employer will be the first owner. However, what if you commission work from other parties? What if you bring in self-employed consultants or you commission contractors, so design agencies or someone like that? You will not own the copyright. That's very similar as well in unregistered design rights. You won't own those intellectual property rights. So what can you do? Well, you need to assign those rights into your company. So you need a decent contract that so you can acquire those rights. What's another big problem area? Confidential information and how you protect that. So confidential information, know-how, trade secrets particularly, very, very big in motorsport, obviously. You design materials, lots of secret stuff here, lots of confidential stuff that you don't want your competitors to know about. How do you protect confidential information? Well, fundamentally, you've got to keep it secret. If it gets into the public domain, it's no longer confidential. You can't then monetize it. You can't exploit it when other people know about it. All the little pictures that people try to take of cars. You might be walking around here and see little photographs being taken by people. As when it gets into the public domain, it's no longer confidential. You can't really exploit it. You need to keep secret what you can. And again, how do you do this? Well, particularly, you need to make sure you have decent confidentiality obligations in all of your contracts. Employees obviously move on from your business. You don't want employees taking away trade secrets of your business and using them for competitors and other businesses. So you need to ensure that your employment contracts are watertight. All of your processes within your business are watertight so that if your employees leave, or indeed you hire self-employed consultants or whoever sort of disappears from your business, that they will respect your confidentiality, keep secret your unique trade secrets. If you want an illustration of the problems in motorsport particularly, there's two recent cases in the last 10 years or so, Force India versus Malaysia Racing Team, effectively Lotus F1, and also Mercedes-AMG versus Benjamin Hoyle. These deal with confidentiality points and copyright. If you Google that, you'll be able to read sort of commentary on those cases and how, motorsport businesses get into problems with these areas. And obviously it's not limited to F1. Obviously that's where a lot of the money is, and they can obviously sue people a lot easier than the smaller teams and the smaller businesses, but it's relevant across the field. So how can we help? Well, we can, as I said earlier, we're a full service law firm. My team particularly can help you with all commercial contracts, your employment issues, protecting your trade secrets, registering some intellectual property as well. So if anyone wants to have a chat in a bit more detail about these things, come and find us. We're in the hall down the end. Okay. Thanks very much.
Time for questions. Have we got time for questions? Right, any questions, anybody? We have got a bit of time if anybody wants to ask anything. Have we stunned you all into silence? I think the whole thing from all three of us is, there are experts here. One thing we were just talking about particularly again was the prize money, that a lot of drivers don't realise if you get prize money, you need to be declaring it, and it does depend on the country that you're in. And it's just knowing that even if you don't know your regulations as well, you have somebody that you can call on, so you can be on track, get penalised and say, suddenly I need to pick somebody's brain, is it worth appealing? Because it costs money. At the end of the day, you're spending a lot of money to race. Do you want to spend even more on a judicial process that might not go anywhere? So make sure you know your regulations, or make sure you have somebody on speed dial like myself who can help you. And on from Kevin's side as well, the intellectual property, a lot of people don't realise that it is not just Formula One, and a lot of drivers, they all have their own logos, yes, trademarks, that sort of thing. Do they protect them? So any comments from you guys?
From an IP point of view, we love working with trademarks and copyright. They're a great way of actually channeling income into image rights companies effectively for their drivers, and it's always good.
Absolutely, and all the reliefs that are available. Yeah. On the R&D side, particularly. Yeah.
And I think as far as the regulations are concerned, they're changing a lot because, as you know, since it was MSA and now become Motorsport UK, there has been a huge amount of changes. There's a lot, particularly, is there anyone in the audience that does karting, runs karting teams? No. Karting particularly has undergone a lot of changes. We're still going through the CIK trial. And there are a lot of penalties and decisions that are not appealable, and a lot of people are not very happy about that, but it's trying to slimline the process. And because I know clerks and stewards that spend the whole day just doing judicials at a kart meeting, and it's becoming a little bit more like that with certainly circuit racing. I know personally, rallying I think as well, where there's people are more aware that they can't just get away with things. If somebody else is, I mentioned about a dodgy ECU. If you're aware of that and this guy is winning competitions, it's not fair, is it? So a lot of people are more aware now that you can do something about it, and championships have been decided on this. You'll have seen in the press, no doubt, that there's been a few championships that have been decided sometime afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, if the protesters had been put in earlier, maybe it wouldn't have come to that. It's because people haven't done it until the last minute, and then they realise, oh, actually, I could win the championship if I appeal this. If they'd have done it before, it would have been decided on the day, which is much more satisfactory for everybody, isn't it? You don't want to win a championship in a courtroom. So be on it as quickly as you possibly can. That's my suggestion to everybody. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.